My parents gave my sister $100,000 for a house, then looked at me and said, "You're the failure." No whisper, no hesitation, just a verdict dropped between bites of pot roast. My brother-in-law raised his glass. My mom smiled like it was normal. I remember my fork slipping, the sound sharper than their silence. No one stopped me when I stood. No one asked where I was going. That night, I didn't cry. I packed my life into a trunk and drove until the highway went dark. 2 years later, they learned what silence can build and what it can destroy. Before I tell you the rest, tell me, where are you listening from, so I know I'm not alone. And when you've heard my story, tell me, what would you have done in my place? They always said our family looked perfect, matching sweaters at Christmas, polite smiles for church photos, the kind of household that neighbors envied. What they didn't see was who ironed those sweaters, who washed the dishes after those dinners, who stayed quiet to keep the peace. That was me. Ava, the steady one, the fixer, the invisible glue. Veronica, my sister, was the light. Straight A's, homecoming crown, full scholarship to UCLA. Dad filmed every award ceremony like it was a red carpet event. When I brought home B's, he said, "You're not applying yourself." When I made art club president, Mom smiled thinly and said, "That's cute." At 16, Veronica got a shiny blue car with a bow on top. My birthday dinner was Applebee's and a $50 card. "Be grateful," Mom said, straightening my hair for a picture. The flash went off, but I blinked late. That photo still sits on their mantle, proof that I existed, but not how it felt. College was worse. Veronica's tuition was fully funded. Mine wasn't funded at all. When I asked about help, Dad carved roast beef like a judge handing down a sentence. "We're not paying for a state school," Mom added softly. "State schools are for students who didn't aim high enough." I swallowed both sentences whole. I signed the loans alone, 6.8% every dollar a bruise. 2 jobs kept the lights on the library at dawn and a diner at night. Winter cracked my hands open. When pneumonia hit, I called home shaking. Dad said, "You need better time management." Mom asked about vitamins. I hung up and stared at my phone until it dimmed. Then came a knock. Mrs. Chen, our neighbor from the next building, stood there with soup and a small envelope. "You're not alone," she said, pressing it into my palm. Inside was a $500 check. It wasn't the amount that broke me, it was the kindness. I cried until the soup went cold. From then on, I learned to notice who showed up. Therapy later gave it a name: protective expectations. I started to plan for absence, to survive it. When graduation came, they didn't come. I saw other families holding bouquets, cameras flashing. I held my own degree and whispered, "I made it anyway." That night, I took the bus home, diploma still warm in its sleeve. My phone buzzed with Veronica's new photo, her engagement ring shining under fairy lights. The caption read, "Dreams do come true." I liked the post. Then I turned off notifications, because deep down I knew dreams did come true, just not the ones they planned for me. After graduation, life got quieter, but not in a peaceful way. Silence sat heavy like a house still standing after a fire. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat where the hum of dryers replaced small talk. I worked long hours as a junior designer, saving every paycheck like it was proof I could survive without them. I told myself I was fine, independent, unbothered. But sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., phone glowing on the nightstand, and scroll through their photos, Sunday dinners, Veronica's bridal shower vacations I wasn't invited to. Their smiles looked permanent. My absence looked intentional. When the wedding invitation finally arrived, it wasn't from them. It came from the event planner, a polite, automated email with gold cursive letters that said, "You're cordially invited." My name was spelled wrong. I stared at it for a full minute before closing my laptop. That was the night I booked my first therapy session. Dr. Singh had kind eyes and a voice like calm water. She listened as I described my family, how love always came with conditions, how approval felt like oxygen I had to earn. When I finished, she asked one question: "Have you ever tried not performing for it?" That sentence followed me home. It echoed through my apartment while I folded laundry, while I brushed my teeth, while I stared at the blinking voicemail light. Mom's voice filled the room. "Call us back, honey. Don't be stubborn." I didn't. Days turned to weeks. My phone buzzed with reminders from therapy. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors you control. I practiced saying no in the mirror, at first awkwardly, then steadily. The word felt foreign, almost dangerous. When Christmas came, I sent no gifts, no texts. The first day felt guilty, the second lighter. By the third, I could breathe without permission. Veronica's wedding happened without me. Photos flooded social media, her lace gown, my parents' beaming faces, the caption, "Family Forever." I stared at it from my tiny balcony, city noise swelling below. A bee hovered over a dying plant on the railing. I remember thinking even bees know where not to land. A week later, Mom left another voicemail. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I deleted it without listening twice. That night, I turned off the ringer, sat by the window, and let the quiet fill the space they used to occupy. So I stopped calling them. No texts, no visits, no explanations. Silence became my new language, cold, steady, deliberate, and I didn't know it then, but that silence would become the loudest thing I'd ever build. The silence didn't fix everything, but it gave me room to see the cracks. Without their voices filling every corner of my mind, I started hearing my own. Work became a rhythm I could trust. Days blurred into sketches, deadlines, and late-night coffee. I wasn't thriving yet, but I wasn't breaking either. Each client project paid another bill, another ounce of proof that I could live without their permission. Still, the ache lingered. Every holiday felt like standing outside a window watching warmth I didn't deserve. One February, pneumonia came back. I remember the fluorescent light of urgent care, the echo of beeping machines. I lay there shivering, scrolling through my phone, hovering over Mom. My thumb stopped inches from calling. Then I turned off the screen. I didn't need another lesson in disappointment. When I got home, there was a note taped to my door, soup inside, P. Chen. Mrs. Chen, my old neighbor, had found me again. She handed me a thermos and said, "Rest, the world can wait." Her kindness hit harder than any apology I'd ever begged for. By spring, I was back on my feet and restless. I wanted a life that didn't feel like waiting. Therapy helped me name it. I was tired of surviving. I wanted to build. I started looking at listings, cheap land up north, far enough to hear myself think. The kind of place people drove past without seeing potential. The kind of place no one could take from me. 3 months later, I signed papers for 40 acres of neglected soil and a house with more holes than windows. Everyone else saw a wreck. I saw possibility. The first nights were brutal. No heat, no Wi-Fi, just wind rattling the siding and me swearing at leaky pipes. But for the first time, every failure was mine to fix. I learned how to seal drafts with plastic, how to repair drywall from YouTube, how to keep bees alive through cold nights. Tom, my neighbor across the ridge, stopped by one morning with coffee and a grin. "You working the land or letting it work you?" he asked. I laughed for the first time in months. Weekends became rituals, mud on my hands, sawdust in my hair, sunburn on my neck. Slowly, lavender sprouted in the back field rows of shy green, pushing through stubborn dirt. I started keeping journals, logging every mistake, every bloom. The pages filled like proof of rebirth. One night I stood in the doorway of that half-finished farmhouse, looking out over the field under a full moon. My breath fogged in the cold, but something inside me had settled. For years I'd begged for belonging. Now I was building it with my own hands. And as the first season changed, I realized I hadn't just gone silent. I'd gone sovereign. Spring came early that year. The lavender had started to bloom in wide, uneven rows, soft purple waves brushing the wind. I remember thinking the silence finally sounded different, less empty, more earned. The bees had returned steady and loyal, and I worked beside them in the fields. I didn't know it then, but that peace was about to be interrupted. It started with a text from an unknown number, "Ava, is this really your place?" I didn't answer. 2 hours later, the phone rang again, this time Dad's number. I stared at it long enough to hear the voicemail start. His voice was too casual, too smooth. "Your sister drove past a property in Sonoma today. Big field, tin roof, lavender everywhere. Is that yours?" I wiped the dirt off my hands, staring at the horizon. "It is," I said when I finally called back. There was a pause on the line, like someone searching for the right tone to use. "It's impressive," he said. "We didn't know you were doing so well. Maybe we can help you expand, make it something bigger. I have contacts, investors." I cut him off. "No, Dad. You had your chance." He laughed once, low and patronizing. "Don't be stubborn. We're family." That word family landed like a stone. "Family doesn't call you a failure and fund your replacement," I said quietly. I hung up before he could respond. 2 days later, an email arrived. Subject line, investment proposal. I didn't open it. I archived it instead. A week passed. The lavender kept growing unbothered. Then a courier truck rolled up the dirt road, dust spiraling behind it. The driver stepped out with a manila envelope and asked for my signature. Inside was a personal check for $100, $1,000. Memo line for your college. Folded with it was a short note in my mother's looping handwriting. "We were too hard on you. This is our way of making things right." I sat with it for 10 minutes. No tears, no shaking hands, just quiet. Then I got up, found my scissors, and cut the check into clean strips thin as confetti. I slid the pieces into another envelope with one sentence written in blue ink: "You can't buy forgiveness." I mailed it back certified. 3 days later, Dad showed up at my gate. The cameras caught him before I did khakis pressed shoes, polished weekend face rehearsed. He waved at the lens like I was still that child waiting for his approval. I pressed the intercom button. "Leave," I said. "I just need 5 minutes," he replied. His voice cracked in places it never used to. "I was wrong, Ava. Please. I want to talk." "You had 26 years to talk," I said. "You used them poorly." He tried the parental tone again. "We're your parents. We made mistakes, but parents get access." I almost laughed. Access is earned, not presumed, and not purchased. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything he'd ever said. Then softer. "Can't we move past this? You can move without me." He looked straight at the camera. His eyes, red at the edges, begged for something he didn't know how to name. "Forgive us," he whispered. I said, my voice steady. "But forgiveness isn't reconciliation." The gate motor hummed to life. It closed slowly, mechanical and final. He didn't move until the panels met in the middle, cutting the view in half. The camera blinked once, then went still. I logged the visit in a notebook, time, date, weather. Evidence beats memory when storms return. Then I went back to the fields. Work held better than nostalgia ever could. That night, I watched the footage again. The way he stood there, unsure what to do without power. The way I didn't flinch. I realized something no therapy session could have taught me. Peace isn't earned through apologies. It's protected by boundaries. A week later, a second envelope came. No note this time. Just the same check amount voided. A gesture of surrender, maybe, or guilt. I shredded it without opening fully. The season moved forward. The lavender deepened its color, bees thickened in number, and the land stopped feeling borrowed. One morning, while checking the hives, I saw Veronica's car idling at the end of the road. She didn't drive in, just sat there. From where I stood, her face looked small behind the glass. She held her phone up like she was taking a photo, maybe proof for our parents that I existed outside their story. I didn't wave. I didn't move. I let her look as long as she wanted. That afternoon, Dad called again. "Your sister says the property's worth over $2 million. Is that true?" "That's what the appraisal says." He went silent. I could hear him breathe. Then came the familiar pivot, the pitch disguised as concern. "You've built something incredible, but you can't manage all that alone. Let us help you grow it. You'll need experience, real guidance this time." I thought of every lecture, every withheld check, every smirk that followed my effort. I thought of the girl who once begged for a seat at their table. Then I said it clean, quiet, absolute. "No." Ava, no is a sentence. I said, remembering Dr. Singh's voice. And for the first time, there was no guilt in the word, only gravity. When I hung up, the fields hummed with bees. The wind carried the scent of lavender through the open windows, and somewhere beyond the gate, a car engine started, then faded away. That night, I walked the perimeter of the land, flashlight in hand, following the fence line I'd built myself. Each post stood firm, each wire tight. Boundaries, physical and otherwise, holding. They called me a failure. But failure had built something that outlasted their approval. 2 years of silence had turned into soil roots bloom, and as the moonlight brushed over the fields, I realized they'd been right about one thing all along. I wasn't part of their world anymore. I'd built my own. Summer came hot and full, the kind of heat that hums through everything. The lavender reached waist-high, thick and fragrant. Harvest week arrived and the fields turned into motion, Emma and Tyler cutting stems, laughter spilling through the rows. Their joy filled the spaces where guilt used to live. We packed boxes late into the evening. Barn doors opened, cicadas loud in the trees. The first big order shipped at dawn, 6 figures, clean and steady. I watched the truck disappear down the dirt road and felt something unclench inside me. For the first time in my life, everything that supported me was something I had built. I sent care boxes to everyone who had shown up when no one else did, Mrs. Chen, Dr. Singh, even Tom, who now helped me fix the old irrigation system. Each box carried a note. Thank you for staying when you didn't have to. One morning, I found an old photo wedged inside a book, a family picture, all of us smiling in perfect formation. I looked at my younger self frozen on the edge of the frame and whispered, "You made it out." The farm hummed outside, alive and honest. The gates stayed closed, but my world had never been more open. They had given her a house. I had built an entire life. And peace, real peace, was the only inheritance I ever needed. They called it rebellion. I called it recovery. If you've ever had to choose peace over permission, you'll understand what came next. There are more stories like mine about family betrayal and the quiet kind of revenge. Stay with me. Watch the next story in the playlist. You're not alone.